All right. Well, it is now at 5, so I'm going to ask Katie to kick things off.
Great. Thanks, Abigail. Yes, it's 5 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to share. So first, welcome to our webinar, A Crystal Ball for Blind and Visually Impaired Students, a glimpse into your first semester at college. As Abigail said, my name is Katie Otaggio, and I am the Engagement Operations Manager for Learning Allies College Success Program. I would like to mention before we really get into anything that we are recording this webinar, and we will be sharing that with everyone once the recording is available, so that will come out to you later on. At this time, I'd like to invite my colleagues Abigail and Kristen and Mary, who are all on the call, to introduce themselves. Abigail?
Thank you. So I'm Abigail Shaw. I work with Katie and the others on the College Success Program here at Learning Ally. I'm the mentor coordinator. And I also wanted to just remind everyone that if you have a question, feel free to add it to the chat box. Later on, we'll do a Q&A, at which point we'll rely on the raise hand feature. So to raise your hand on a PC, the quick key is Alt-Y. On a Mac, it's Option-Y. And if you're calling in from the phone, it's *9. And at that point, I'll go through and unmute folks and welcome you to share your questions. But we'll continue with introductions, and I'll pass it on to Kristen.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Waitaki, and I am the Curriculum and Content Editor for the College Success Program. I'll be mainly in the background as the timekeeper, and thank you very much for coming. Welcome.
Mary?
Hi, I'm sorry, I could not get off of mute. Abigail is determined that I not say anything during this during this webinar. Hi everyone, I'm Mary Alexander, and I'm the program director for the College Success Program and for Learning Ally. And I'm so excited that you're all here. You know, our program's been going on now for almost 4 years, actually 4 years going on 5 years. So we're excited at the growth we've seen, and look forward to the webinar and learning a little bit more from our mentors and from all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mary. I'm going to go ahead also now and introduce our speakers for today. All of them are participants in the Learning Allies College Success Program as mentors. Moderating our call today is Brian Duarte. Brian has a Bachelor of Science in Software Engineering, a Master's in Computer Science, and is currently pursuing his PhD in Software Engineering at Arizona State University. He works as a research student in the Center for Cognitive Ubiquitous Computing and is a part of the ASU program Alliance for Person-Centered Accessibility Technologies. Brian became blind at the age of 18 as a result of a motorcycle accident. Our panelists, in addition to Brian, we have 4 panelists. The first is Maureen Hayden, who has a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from the University of Rhode Island, a Master's in Biology from Walla Walla University, and is also pursuing a PhD in Marine Biology at Texas A&M University. She was born with retinopathy of prematurity and has no vision in her right eye and is legally blind in her left. Miso Kwok has a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, Education Studies, and Disability Studies from UCLA, and a Master's in Education Policy and Management from Harvard. She works at the Human Services Research Institute, supporting efforts to improve disability and aging policy across the US. Miso proudly identifies not only as a blind person, but also as a 1.5 generation immigrant Korean American, because she believes that these aspects of her identity positively shaped her work ethic. Rashad Jones, who is also blind, has a Bachelor of Music in Music Education, specifically choral and voice, from the Schwab School of Music at Columbus State University. He serves as minister of music at his church and is a self-proclaimed people person. Sam Vanderswa has a Bachelor of Arts in Unique and Interdisciplinary Studies from City University of New York. Although his major during college was applied psychology and neuroscience, he is currently pursuing a career in textile design. Sam's visual condition consists of albinism, nystagmus, and astigmatism. And now I'll hand it off to Brian, and we can go ahead and really dig in.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, I think so. Welcome everyone. Like Katie said, my name is Brian Duarte, and I will be moderating today. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to start off with some questions. And the first topic we're going to address is going to be transitioning. This is a very big topic, and for good reason. In high school to college, we get so used to our college life, or our high school life, I apologize, being kind of structured. We have back-to-back classes. We usually have somebody there who advocates for us and with us and helps us along the way. Our schedule, our assignments, everything is kind of set for us. When we get to college, we lose all of that. There isn't necessarily somebody there. Our classes might be staggered every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Our assignments might be extended, weeks or a couple weeks, or even the topics are bi-weekly, whatever. And so what we want to do is we want to just be able to make this transition smoothly. So this is obviously a big question. So we're going to jump into this one. Maureen. You left your home, your family, your state when you went to college. Can you share with us your examples of some of your experiences and how you developed strategies for making this transition smoothly?
Yeah, definitely. So for some background, I grew up in Arizona, and because I wanted to be a marine biologist, I needed to go somewhere where there was water. I guess there was water in Arizona at one point, but had to move out of the state. So part of that involved me having to prepare to live on my own and be independent. And I was very fortunate to have TVIs and parents who were really involved in helping me make the transition from high school to college, which included interviewing disability services offices at every school I applied for, talking with them, just pre-introducing myself before I was even accepted, touring the college. I had the ability to tour each college campus as well before attending, and kind of get the lay of the land, which was really, really great as well. And so that allowed me to check out things like access to public transportation, locations to other stores, just the mobility aspects of navigating the campus in general.
Awesome. Okay, great. So the next person, Sam, similarly, you left your family and your home when you went to college. Can you share with us some of your experiences and some strategies or things that helped you in your transition?
Yeah, so when I went to college, I was a commuter, so I saved money and was able to stay at home, but spent most of my time on campus. And similarly, I had to quickly learn to be nimble and talk to my professors and have to self-advocate. And accessibility office was very helpful in that regard. But again, it relied a lot on me knowing my needs and writing the appropriate letters and making myself known on a name basis for all my professors. But during my first 2 years of college, it was community college, so that made it a little easier. Mm-hmm. And then the following years, I was already sort of used to the routine.
Got you. Yeah, you touched on some very good points. Both of you did, in that sometimes it's not always bad to start with a community college. Also, it's good to get into that routine, like you said, and probably the biggest one is advocating for yourself, which is a great segue for our next section. Our next section is going to be topics of accommodations accessibility and basically self-advocacy. So we have some pretty good experiences here. So we're going to start off with Rashad. Rashad, you had some unique experience early on in your school because your school wasn't very set up for you to receive the accommodations that you needed, but there was somebody in particular from your school that was very helpful in teaching you and helping you through things before you developed your self-advocacy skills. Can you share with us some of that and how you learned your self-advocacy?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Brian said, my experience was a little bit different from the traditional going straight from high school to going straight to the dorm. Although I did go to college, I commuted back and forth from home because my university is located in my hometown. So anyway, as a result of that, the Disability Services Coordinator at Columbus State University knew that I was coming in fresh out of high school, having come from the environment where lots of things were already taken care of for me. So she said, you know, I'm going to help you through this process at first. And so she told me about having to purchase a print copy of the books that I would need. And I was very baffled by that at first. She said, we have to have proof of purchase. We know that you can't use them yourself in the traditional sense, but we have to have proof of purchase before we're able to contact the Alternative Media Access Center in Atlanta to produce the books in an alternative format. But she walked me through how to do that. And it was very important because thereafter, after the first year, I would say, it more and more became my responsibility to communicate with my professors. And so what that meant for me, specifically when I got into my music degree, especially, was that I had to, after registering for the classes that I would be taking in the next semester, I had to send out an email to all of my professors asking them for the title, the edition, the author, the ISBN, all of those information for each books that we would be using. Even if they weren't sure which books, it was my responsibility to go ahead and send that email out so that it was documented that I had made requests so that I could get the appropriate accommodations. Because what was happening was sometimes the professors were being contacted and they had to scramble to get things in an alternative format for me, the Office of Disability Services. So there was an issue where that was still something that the office handled, but then eventually it became my responsibility. And once I began to do that, it made me feel so good because at that point, it wasn't my fault that I didn't have the books and things that I needed if they were not there on time. And it was well documented.
Like being proactive was key in your learning to be self-advocacy.
Certainly, absolutely. That's something that I became used to doing. So
awesome. So Miso, I know that self-advocacy was big for you, and the way that you went about it in particular was really, I think the center of it would be building relationships with people. So do you want to share with us how you did that?
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of complementing what Rashad just shared about the importance of being proactive is knowing what you need and knowing the people that you can reach out to. So for example, when I was taking statistics class, I quickly realized after contacting my professor, just as Rashad has mentioned, that the software that we're going to be using is not compatible with any of the screen readers that I had in hand. So I had to go ahead and make a request to get a lab assistant person who would come to the lab sections of the class and help me use the software as we completed the lab assignments. So I had to first find people who might be a good fit for that. And so knowing exactly what I need this person to do for me was important, and also kind of talking to them, identifying a few people, then talking to each of them to kind of figure out if we're a good fit, if our schedules fit, and so forth. And then when I'm actually working with this person, I can't just say, hey, I need your help, because that's such a broad and general statement that you need to have a specific ask. I need you to read this line. When professor says this and this, please write that down. Something like that. So I think that was really important part in knowing how to advocate for myself and making sure that my accommodations are in place.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good. So Maureen, being in a STEM degree specifically, it's not always about asking for extended time or getting your materials. There's some additional and added things that you may require, because we have things such as labs. Can you share your experience with how you went about advocating for yourself to get accommodations in something like a lab setting specifically?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I asked the department to do is they would have a microscope that had a camera attachment on the eyepiece, and it would project onto like a TV monitor. So they would have that on a rolly cart for whenever I had labs, so that way I could look at it. And it wasn't only just helpful for me, it was helpful for whoever my lab mate was too. And sometimes even the professors would wind up using it. Additionally, for things like chemistry lab, I would ask for like a lab assistant, not to do the labs for me, but to assist me with handling chemicals and reagents. So that way I did not have to get my face close to acids or bases, or like too close to when I had to weigh out powders and things like that. It's just all about communicating with your professors and saying, hey, we're figuring this out together. Let's talk about it and work through this.
Awesome. Yeah, and all three of those had very good examples. Being able to develop relationships with your professors, building relationships with your disability center and your disability advisors in particular, and really just being able to find your resources that are available to you on and through the campus is so crucial. And just as a side note, the roller cart thingy, that's a scientific term, so feel free to use that. Awesome. So moving on to our next topic. This is something that's always a pretty good topic in any kind of setting like this, and that's assistive technology. But with that, we're going to kind of tie in time management as well, because you know, sometimes you hear that rule of thumb that it takes someone who's visually impaired or blind 3 times as long to do the same assignment that their peers might, who are sighted or not visually impaired. And some of that is because of assistive technology. We have the ability to do these things through assistive technology, but they're not always the fastest things, right? Sometimes they can be, but scanning an entire book versus flipping through pages takes a lot more time, right? So jumping into that, Sam, you were a low vision student, and you had some experience using assistive technology. Although it might be a little bit different than someone who's fully blind, it still is a key part of your, or key component, if you will, to your success. Can you share with us some of the assistive tools that you used and how you managed your time effectively using these things?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of what I did was actually, as far as managing time, it wasn't using tools to necessarily sort of schedule my timing, but it's more like a save time time saver. So like I would, rather than reading a book under a CCTV, which I did sometimes, and that was arduous sometimes, especially with volumes of text I had to read for class. I would collect PDFs actually of textbooks and use VoiceOver to read the text, so that I can get through the material quickly and take notes as the voice would be on like 2x or something, and or even sometimes triple. But like I would use that, and yeah, and as far as, you know, learning how to use it in a way that was feasible time-wise, right? Like if I were to go to class and set up my assistive technology, I would arrive earlier so that I would be in the front row with my low-tech equipment set up, and yeah, this is my space.
Absolutely, and that's great. That's actually really good to do. So you don't necessarily sit at the back of the room, and you don't come in 1 minute before class. You come in early, you're prepared early, and you get set up. That's great. That's great. Miso, similarly, but on the opposite side, you were a totally blind student, and you use assistive technology just the same. It's very important and critical in the way that we interact and pursue our school. So do you want to share with us how you used assistive technology, maybe some of your key ways that you used assistive technology to both be successful in your classes, but also to kind of manage your time?
Yeah, so I think there are a few things that I would like to highlight. One is in terms of time management, coming up with a system that works for you, whether that is using, you know, Google Calendar, iCalendar, whatever app on the phone or on your computer. Personally, I found just having a big document on my Braille device, such as Braille Nota Apex or Braille Sense Polaris, and writing down the tasks that need to be done and with the deadline, and then marking with like an X or kind of my own markings of where the progress is. And another point that I would like to make is in terms of the extra time that we need to account for as blind and visually impaired students. That certainly was the case at times, especially if I had to turn in a very specifically formatted paper, for example, as a psychology student and working in social science discipline, I often had to write APA formatted paper, which have very specific ways of formatting your paper and making sure that it looks a certain way visually. While there are techniques to achieve that screen reader, I sometimes found it to be more efficient if I got a sighted person's assistant. So I would complete my assignment a little ahead of the deadline. I would make an effort to do that and set up an appointment with somebody that I trusted. And then I would walk through this person to ask, is there any oddity that you're catching with your eyes? And just to make, I knew in my head what it needed to look like. So I would ask specifically with this person, going over just aesthetics of the paper. I think overall, it's really important to just know yourself and plan accordingly how much time that you might need in order to meet your deadlines and complete your assignments.
Absolutely. So just to recap this one, you're an overachiever. Not all of us are. Being proactive is better than being a procrastinator. Got it. No, those are all really good points, and that makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I would throw in addition to this is know your resources. Like you said, you would finish your assignments early on, and then you would ask somebody. I don't know if that somebody you would ask was like your tutor centers on campus. That's a huge and great resource, especially when writing papers. I used to do it all the time. I would take my papers in and have somebody in the writing center read them and give me their feedback. And so, but that does take a little bit more being proactive and getting things done early. So great, thank you for that. So the next thing we're gonna move on to, these next couple ones are pretty fun. We're gonna talk about socializing, social life on campus. Being social, being engaged, getting out there, getting involved is probably one of the biggest and best things that any student can do, whether you're blind or low vision or not. Being involved gets you around, helps you to meet people that could potentially be resources for you. So to go through some of this, Rashad, we're gonna start off with you, my dude. The first thing that I wanted to ask you was to talk about your experience being in a fraternity. I did not know, so tell me about it. You might have to unmute to do that. I can jump to somebody else while you unmute. Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I had muted myself as an extra precaution and then got stuck. Anyway, yeah, so I was able to join a couple of different groups, but the music fraternity was something that I had heard about from a cousin of mine, and it was something that I wanted to become a part of. And so I did. They really reached out to me, and I just went to their interest meeting, knew a couple of people who were in it, but didn't know anything about it. So I just made sure that I went to the meeting places. And the thing was that once I got there, they were willing to help me out. They were totally willing to help me out. They even had one of the required readings that we had to do. The larger organization had it in Braille. While most materials were not in Braille or even accessible, I really thought that was great that they were willing to help to make the accommodations. So if you're worried about whether or not something is accessible or whether or not people will be responsive to you, I would say to step out on a limb and try it out anyway. A similar thing happened with the gospel choir that I joined. One of my friends from the music school had a class with me where we traveled between two campuses. And so really just making those connections with people, you never really know just how supportive they'll be if you're willing to say, hey, I'm really interested in this. And a lot of times they will make the effort to work with you to see what kind of accommodations, how you can be fully integrated in the activities of
All right,
social life.
shameless shout out. What's the name of the Greek life you were in?
Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia.
What is it again?
Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia. It's the
all right, that's
nation's
a
largest music
mouthful. So
fraternity.
you must have to be a lyricist to say
Symphonia.
that one. So okay, cool. So Miso, we're gonna move on to Miso real quick. So Miso, I know you were very active in some clubs and groups and different faith-based organizations. You want to share with us your experience quickly on some of those?
Yeah, so I was involved playing music throughout college through a chamber ensemble. And also I was a part of a Christian fellowship, and later in my college career, I got involved with University Committee on Disability. And I think the biggest takeaway from those extracurricular activities is, one, just putting ourselves out there. And while I can talk about a lot of kind of successes, if you will, and positive experiences, I definitely had experiences where I would try to join an organization and I knew that that was like not a necessarily welcoming environment for a blind student like myself. And I think being able to shake that off and resilient and just continue trying until you find your niche, I think that's really important. And it's been already said here in this space, and I'm sure many students know, but I think college experiences are enriched by those social connections that we make, because it's not just about the classes that you're taking, although they're certainly important.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very good. That's very good. Maureen, Miss Maureen, the marine biologist. You were involved in, I had to get this information previously, so if I mess it up, I apologize, but can you tell us about your involvement in ensembles? I don't know if I did that correctly in a sentence, but tell us about it.
Yeah, so I did marching band all throughout high school, and it was actually one of my requirements for university was I wanted a music group of some kind, because for me that was a way to meet others. And one cool thing about the University of Rhode Island is the students in the marching band are technically considered athletes. So we got to go onto campus a week early for band camp, which was not only cool because band camp is awesome and there are theme days, but I automatically made like 100 friends. They showed me around campus to make sure I knew where my classes were. And I remember on the first day, I was like in the cafeteria, like the dining hall, like looking for a place to sit. And I remember I sat down like by myself. And the next thing I know, someone from the clarinet section comes up and he's like, "What are you doing here by yourself? Come sit with us." Like, and then they eventually learned that like I couldn't see them. And so they all just got accustomed to shouting my name from across the room. Like it was totally normal. And joining those ensembles was a great way for me to automatically meet other people. And like Rashad, I also wound up joining a music sorority called Tau Beta Sigma. So
we will address that question at the end, but yeah, thank you for that question. So that's we all know the clarinet people are the nice ones. So that's great. Sam, quickly, you want to wrap this section up by telling us about your involvement with clubs and student government?
Yes, yes. I have very fond memories of college because of my social connections. I was not a really sociable guy during high school, but I sort of threw myself out there in college because I felt like I was able to reinvent myself in many ways. And people were more accepting of my visual impairment, oddly enough. It seemed like it was a different crowd. And yeah, I mean, I was encouraged by a lot of people in community college to yeah, throw myself out there and make myself known. And it was very rewarding. I'm very fond of the friends I've made, especially there in community college. Yeah, and student government was a trip. It was, I learned a lot. It was very difficult, but I got to connect with some cool people on my team.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'd
Absolutely.
recommend. Yeah, yeah.
So I absolutely agree with you in that that sentiment you said, where getting involved helped you kind of overcome and be more a part, and people didn't take you so much as somebody who was blind, but you know, just another student who happened to be blind. I also was involved with student government for 3.5 years when I was an undergrad, and because of that, I became well connected with the dean of the university, well, all of the deans, with the disability center, with professors, with more and more students, and just the amount of reach that you have to meet people was just amazing. Just to get involved with student government. Plus, it's a lot of fun.
Yes, it's a
so
lot of
great.
fun.
So we're gonna jump into scholarships. So scholarships, Sam, we're going to start off with you, even though we just finished with you. But Sam, why don't you talk to us about your state scholarship that you received?
Sure. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get a sponsorship by the New York Commission for the Blind. It was a full ride because I was at a CUNY school, so they were able to provide the full tuition, and I was yeah, free to pursue my studies. Despite that, though, you know, I was encouraged to do other work during the meantime, but it wasn't like I was working to pay for my tuition. So it enabled me to focus a lot on my academic endeavors, and but also pursue, you know, work experience without too much pressure.
Awesome. And so what did that scholarship cover for you?
So that covered my class tuition, and sometimes reimbursed my transportation.
And was that full ride, right? Is that what I heard?
Full ride, yeah, full ride.
See?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point those things out very clearly, that there are other avenues from just applying for standard day-to-day scholarships that everybody would apply for. He applied through the state commission, and he was able to get a full ride to school. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's move on to Miso. Miso, why don't you talk to us from another angle about working on campus as a student?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to have a job from the winter quarter of my freshman year on until I graduated from college on campus. And I think my first job was like truly luck, as in somebody saw me walking around the campus independently and being active on campus, and they asked me to be a part of this project that was funded by a university grant to make our campus more accessible. And so they asked me to document accessibility features and not features that are not accessible and ways to improve those things. And that's how I got started working on campus, and eventually moved on to being a student blogger for another campus project. But I think, yeah, it's really, if you have the means and opportunities to do so, I think it's really important to get some work experience under your belt, whether it is even paid or unpaid, because it is a great way to start your career, if you will, in the long-term plan. And with it, I hate to say it, but it is true that it builds your resume, and it also intrinsically it will help you figure out what kind of work you like and what kind of work you don't like, which will be immensely helpful beyond college.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maureen, Miss Maureen, can you talk to us about scholarships and the way that you went about applying for? You've received a number of scholarships from outside of the university specifically. So can you talk to us about that experience?
Yeah, definitely. I honestly at first never thought I would be one for scholarships until my friend encouraged me. He said, you know what, Maureen, you never know. If you don't apply, the answer is no. I'll read over your application. Like, you should do it. You should just do it. So kudos to my friend Zach. And I've received scholarships for academics from organizations such as National Federation of the Blind, Council for Citizens with Low Vision, but I've also sought scholarships and grants through other nonprofits for things like professional development. So for example, I got a scholarship to enhance my scuba diving training through the Women Divers Hall of Fame. And I've also gotten scholarships through Texas A&M University. So, look far and wide and figure out what your story is, because everyone has something unique that they can present about themselves. And if you just go for it, go for it.
So there's a number of things in this section. One being that yes, she does scuba dive in the real ocean with real animals, with real sea life, I guess you should say. But yeah, awesome. Absolutely. Apply far and wide for scholarships. Do not get limited by just applying through a university. The National Federation of the Blind, the ACB, I think the AFB, and very specifically, Learning Ally has a great scholarship that they offer annually for undergrads and graduate students. And it's a great way to start out and getting involved. So definitely look at work. I call it work study, but really it's working on campus. Find jobs on campus. Everywhere you look, there are students who are working. So don't be afraid to reach out for scholarships. You could be the one, and also be looking for jobs on campus. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our last topic, and this is actually I got this idea from one of your registration forms, or maybe more than one. But this question is going to be asked to each panelist, and this is how we're going to wrap up our panel time, and then we'll go into some questions. So the question I'm going to ask is going to be the same for each of you, and I'm going to randomly call one of you to answer it. So be ready. So the question is, what I wish I knew before I went to college. Okay, so think hard about what you wish you would have known before you started college, and I want to know what that is. Rashad, we're going to start with you.
Okay, can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. And for those of you who have the benefit of sight, you can now still see me because I turned my video back on. All right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. What I wish that I had known before I got to college was that there would be a lot of things that I would have to take care of. I kind of had an idea. People said, well, you have to advocate for yourself, but no one ever really went into specifics about what that would mean. And so I wish that I had known that there would be so many things that I, as the first visually impaired individual to graduate from that school of music, that there would be a lot of things that I'd have to figure out. So I wish that I had known that. So that's why we're sharing this with you guys.
Paving the way. I love it. I love it. Okay. Let's go with Miso. Let's hear what you wish you would have known before you went to college.
Yeah, I think two things. One, just generally, it's okay to not know, and it's not just about blind students or like what have you. I think for college students, it's okay to not know what you want to major in. It's okay to not know what you're doing, because nobody really has it together.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically as a blind student, I think in retrospect, self-advocacy was such an important thing, being able to know what I need and how to ask that, and being able to be proactive.
That's great. That is key, knowing what you need and how to ask for it. Nothing's better in self-advocacy than knowing what you need and how to ask for it. There are right and wrong ways. Be looking for our podcast to drop soon. So next we're going to move on to Sam. What would you wish you would have known before you entered college?
Yeah, I think probably the most thing that I would wish I knew before going to college was knowing that you can use life experience sometimes to earn credits. During college, I was doing an apprenticeship in textile weaving, and that was sort of at the tail end of college, and my mind was sort of changed into a different focus. And I failed to take advantage of the fact that I could earn credits from that experience. And yeah, I mean, that sort of set me back a little, but I wish that, and I also wish that that I sort of knew that college is sort of a thing you can sort of form for you can sort of make college your own. I mean, I wish people would describe that with what that sort of meant also.
Yeah. I do get that. I do get that. You can tailor college to fit you and what you want to get out of it. Awesome. Okay, so Miss Maureen, why don't you wrap us up in this and tell us what you wish you would have known before you entered college?
Yeah, when I entered college, I thought all professors were scary. They intimidated me a lot. And maybe when you have the accommodations talk, approaching them after the first day of classes in a 400-person lecture is not the best way to do that. Maybe sending them an email and setting up office hours would be good, but I wish I would have known that setting up regular office hours with professors would not only lead to my academic success, it would also lead to lifelong professional relationships and networking that still serve me today, many years out, like 5 years out of my bachelor's degree. I still keep up with a lot of my professors.
Awesome. Well, thank you all panelists for your time. I again am Brian, and we had Maureen and Rashad and Sam and Miso. We're going to switch over to questions now, and so I am going to turn it back over to Katie or Abigail, one of them.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and all of our panelists, Miso, Rashad, Sam, and Maureen. This was great and a lot of fun. So we already had a couple of questions that people posted in the chat, so feel free to add them there. If you'd like to ask your question personally, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. So to raise your hand, the quick key on a PC is Alt-Y, and on a Mac it's Option-Y. And if you're on the phone, you can do *9. So the first question was actually for Maureen about how you how you were able to participate in the marching band as a student with a visual impairment.
Yeah, I do have residual vision, and so the way it works in marching band is the football field is actually split up into a grid, and everybody has their dot. And so long as everybody goes to their dot, it's fine. I have very good spatial memory, and it's really funny. I got really good at memorizing what the back of people's heads looked like. And I played the trombone. So my defense was, hey, if you're not right on your dot and I hit you in the back of the head, it's not my fault, which did happen a few times. But it was one of those things in high school where at first my TVIs were not very big on me doing it. And we went to the band director and we said, well, we don't know how this is going to work. Let's try it. And figured out a way to make it work. And sometimes I couldn't always see the drum major, so whoever was standing next to me would have to count off for the piece or something like that.
Great, thank you. Miso, a lot of us that work for Learning Ally or part of the College Success Program know that you had received one of our National Achievement Awards. Can you tell everyone kind of how much the award was and what did it help you with?
Yeah, so I'm very grateful for Learning Ally scholarship. I do not recall the specific amount, but it was really helpful, especially when the scholarship came as I was finishing up graduate school studies, and my graduate degree was exorbitant expensive, and yeah, it was really helpful. I believe I ended up spending the money to offset my housing costs. I came from California to Boston to pursue my graduate studies. So there was a lot that went to, in terms of monetarily speaking, there was a lot that went to that.
Yeah, so the scholarship is $6,000, and I'll just let people on the call know, I know most of our students joining are in high school still, but you should definitely consider applying for the National Achievement Award. It's available to blind and visually impaired students during their senior year of undergrad or once you're in a graduate program. So you do have to be later into your studies. But you can spend it on, it's a check that Learning Ally makes out directly to you, so you can spend it on whatever you want, however you want to use it. Great, so I'm gonna just keep going on here because we're getting lots of great questions. Maybe Sam, I'll have you respond to this one. We had someone ask about how you use vocational rehabilitation services. And since you specifically talked about receiving sponsorship through the New York State Commission, can you possibly speak to that?
So the question is like, how do I best utilize vocational rehabilitation services?
Yeah, and like, did you connect with your VR counselor and maybe how they were support to you in college?
So yeah, they were very helpful. Maybe as far as pre-college prep, I used, maybe checked in once in a while during college, but I utilized all the vocational services available to me on campus, like networking and talking to professors, applying to internships, and I'm very grateful for the service, especially going into college, because it sort of prepped me for that sort of type of environment.
Great. So we have one or two people with hands raised. I'm going to call them.
A couple really good ones just came in.
Lots of great questions. Variety of topics.
Maureen, can you talk about your experience living in dorms?
Yeah, definitely. So being away from home, I lived in a dorm my freshman year with two other girls who were really, really nice. They were both Rhode Island locals. So one perk I did get is they would both go home on the weekends. So I was very fortunate in that I would get some space on the weekends. But I lived in what was called a living learning community, where I lived in the same dorm with the people I was in the classes with. So we had study halls. So we wouldn't only go to class, we would be in like the same building as the people we're going to classes with, which helped foster community. I will say the first couple months were really hard for me. I would call my parents every night and tell them all the things that happened during the day, about my lectures, about college life. But I will say that one of the great things is because I cannot drive, I was able to work with disability resources, and I was able to get housing on campus all 4 years to avoid having to commute to campus. And during my junior and senior year, I lived in dorms that had a kitchen and like a living room. So that way I was able to take like a partial meal plan where I could cook half the time and then go to the dining hall half the time. And my roommates were really helpful with scheduling trips to the grocery store and going on grocery runs. And my one roommate, her mom was from the area, and so she would always like give me extra groceries because she was just like, "Oh, Mo, we just want to make sure you're fed well," because she was Italian. So
So we do have a question from Rachel Abbott, and I'm going to unmute her.
Ooh.
Okay, Rachel, would you like to share your question?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of the panel. I really appreciate it. This has been so great. I had a question. I am going to be a theater student, and one of my biggest things that I've been encountering is I have to do research papers, and some of the material is inaccessible to me. And I was wondering if any of you had experience having to do research papers where the resources that you need were inaccessible to you, and what kind of strategies you use to complete your research papers. Thank you very much.
Maybe Misa? Would you want to
Yeah,
take that
sure. I've definitely had times where sources that I wanted to read so desperately need accessible. In those cases, I did reach out to my disability services office and told them, could you please, convert this text and describe such and such images. I need this for my paper. And they were often, I don't think there was ever a time that they said no. And you have the right to ask those things, even though they're not directly part of your course. If you're writing a paper for your course, even though the material is not directly on your syllabus, it is still part of your coursework. And so reach out to your disability services office. That's one way to go about it. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Misa. Frankie also has a question. So Frankie, you should be unmuted now if you'd like to pose your question to the group.
Yeah, so I was wondering at the blind person, what is, because it's different for everyone, but especially for someone who may need more time to do homework or study, like, because some people are, saying, oh, you should, study like, 2 hours, a day or whatever, but like how, often or how many hours should you study or do homework, because it is different for everyone, I know, but like everyone can tell me different things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll maybe take this one. I think that it will really look different depending on the major you choose. And beyond just visual impairments, we all have different learning styles. And so I think finding a way to balance out your work will be up to kind of your lifestyle, your learning style. But a lot of the strategies that our panelists suggested today about utilizing your assistive technology, really knowing your assistive tech before you get to college is important. And then relying on resources that are available to you, like the library, tutoring centers, the disability services office. So
Peer note takers.
Yeah, peer note takers. That's great. Thank you, Frankie.
I'll throw in something on that as well. So in college, one thing that is very important is to make sure that you get registered for classes early, as well as check for your syllabus. The syllabus will usually have every deadline of every assignment, project, midterm, final. When you get to those syllabi, make sure that you write down those dates and create a calendar very early on. You will learn that if you follow a calendar or a to-do list or both, in a lot of ways, you put in your calendar, your assignments, your due dates, but then you also put things that need to get done in like a to-do list for each of those. That will help out significantly in managing your time and making sure that you stay on top of your projects.
Thanks.
Also, for me in college, I was a bit of a social butterfly, so I had to learn to say the word no. I really need to study. I can't do everything, and that was just something I had to figure out on my own when it came to work-life balance.
Thanks, Mel. Juliana, you had your hand raised. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Okay. Am I unmuted or hold on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much for this. This has been like super helpful. I just want to know, speaking of assistive tech, what are some key techniques or key skills that I should know before entering college, specifically with JAWS, especially. This is a lot of schools. We don't know if they're going online or not in the fall. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Great. So maybe if I know that Rashad and Miso, you're primarily JAWS users, so maybe the both of you could give a couple pointers of what you think is really important, especially if you guys took any online or asynchronous kind of style courses.
Ladies first.
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of virtual platforms, I would say I think most universities are using Zoom, and I mean you're on Zoom now, so hopefully that's something that you're comfortable with. And I think in general, aside from the virtual environment, I think what's helped me a lot was I would practice listening to text at a faster speed and actually understanding it for comprehension. Yeah, like by just increasing the speed once in a while and being comfortable with that. And I think really getting comfortable with Microsoft's suite, if you're a PC user, especially as you'll have to write many papers and PowerPoint presentations. And I think Google Suite, being very comfortable with those has been really important and helpful. And I actually learned those while in college because these things were not really big when I was in high school. So I think as long as you're open to exploring and being flexible and willing to put the work in, you'll be fine. Like learning, ideally you'll know, it will be good to know beforehand, but as technology evolves, you'll definitely have to learn new technologies while you're in college.
And then what I would say is something that we did not specifically say, but a lot of times the state vocational rehabilitation programs, they have assistive technology classes and things where you can work with someone one-on-one. I actually had a specialist come to my house when I was still living at home during the time between high school and when I was actually going to be living in the dorms. So that was something that was tremendously helpful to me, to help me to brush up on those skills. I primarily used my computer. I didn't use an assistive note taker as much because it was just easier for me. I was already familiar with the laptop. So that was easier for me to do that. And then also, I see a question. I don't know if I'm allowed to just go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, actually, no, that was great, Rashad. Thank you
Thank you so much. That was super helpful.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Can I throw one thing out there just about the learning management systems? Because that was one thing that I think is going to be very important with your learning management systems like Canvas or Blackboard. Canvas is super accessible. You can use that with JAWS or VoiceOver, whichever you use. Blackboard is also becoming more accessible. The thing about Blackboard is it's not super user friendly with a screen reader.
No.
Everything is kind of read out, but it takes a little bit longer. Whereas Canvas is pretty concise. Like, you know, your assignments are in assignments, your calendar is in calendar, and it shows you due dates automatically by the time that the assignment is due. And so there's just a lot of really cool things that Canvas has worked really hard to make accessible. But Blackboard is rising to the occasion as well. I don't use it often, but I teach using Canvas, and I also use Canvas as a student. And I use a Mac with VoiceOver, and it works great for me. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you as well.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks.
Perfect.
So we are actually running up on time, but all the questions that we haven't gotten to, we have saved and can reach out to folks to follow up. But I'm going to pass it over to Kristen and Katie to wrap us up. And thank you, everybody, for joining, and for our panelists for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you, Abigail and Katie and Mary. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, panelists. We will send a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar, and it will also have the contact information for the program and for the mentors. We want to let anyone who is a senior know that you can get a mentor when you are in college to help you along this journey. And we have a curriculum that goes over a lot of these different resources and questions. So feel free to sign up for the program, reach out to us if you need help, and we're happy to accompany you on your college journey. So thank you, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Yeah.